From the frozen shores of the Vikings to the sun-scorched tablets of Mesopotamia and the sacred texts of early Christianity, it seems like every ancient culture was in on the same dark secret. They all thought they knew how the world would end.
Sure.
They imagined different gods and different heroes. But when it came to the final apocalypse, their stories became shockingly similar. A world drowned by water or consumed by fire. A final, cataclysmic battle between good and evil. And a handful of survivors left to start over. How is this possible? How did cultures, sometimes separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, all land on such a similar blueprint for doomsday? Is this just a wild coincidence? Or does it point to something much deeper about all of us? Let's explore the shared fears and cosmic beliefs that tie these ancient prophecies together. We'll look at the wild similarities between the doomsday myths of the Vikings, Mesopotamians, and early Christians, and try to answer the big question: why has humanity always been so obsessed with its own destruction? Before the world ends, it starts to come apart at the seams. In just about every apocalyptic tradition, the big catastrophe is kicked off by a period of warning signs and moral decay. It's a time when the very fabric of society and nature begins to unravel. For the Norse, this was the Fimbulwinter, a terrifying stretch of 3 winters back-to-back, with no summers in between. Famine and chaos gripped the world. The bonds of family and honor dissolved. Brothers killed brothers, and humanity spiraled into a lawless fight for survival. This wasn't just a weather forecast. It was a diagnosis of a sick world, a society that had lost its way and was ripe for destruction. The Norse believed this moral collapse was just as much a part of the apocalypse as the final battle itself. Now, travel thousands of miles and thousands of years back, and you'll find the Mesopotamians had a different, but strangely familiar problem. In the Atrahasis epic, the world isn't destroyed because of wickedness, but because humanity had become too numerous, and most importantly, too noisy. The constant racket from a booming population disturbed the sleep of the head god Enlil, who got so irritated that he decided to just wipe the slate clean. First he sent a plague, then a drought, then a famine. Each time, humanity found a way to survive. But Enlil's patience was wearing thin. This idea of humanity as a cosmic nuisance, a chaotic force messing with divine peace, is a powerful theme. It reflects a deep anxiety about overpopulation and the strain it puts on the world. And of course, this idea of a world judged for its failings is a cornerstone of the early Christian and Hebrew traditions. In the book of Genesis, God sees that the wickedness of humanity is great on the earth. This moral corruption is what directly leads to the decision to bring a great flood. Likewise, the book of Revelation describes a world plagued by sin and rebellion against God, which sets the stage for the final judgment. Just like in the Norse sagas, a breakdown of morality is the ultimate trigger. Whether it's the noise of a restless humanity or the quiet corruption of the human heart. These stories all start from the same place. The world was broken and needed a reset. Once the warnings have been ignored, the main event arrives. Across cultures, it almost always comes in one of 2 spectacular flavors: water or fire. The most widespread of these doomsday scenarios is the Great Flood in Mesopotamia, a land defined by the powerful and unpredictable Tigris and Euphrates rivers. A world-drowning deluge was a terrifyingly real possibility. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by the god Ea about a plan to destroy mankind. He's told to build a massive ark, sealing it with pitch and bitumen. For 6 days and 7 nights, a storm rages, and the flood turns all of humanity to clay. Even the gods cower in fear from the power they've unleashed. When the waters finally recede, Utnapishtim's boat lands on a mountain, and he sends out a dove, a swallow, and finally a raven to find dry land. The parallels to the story of Noah in the book of Genesis are impossible to ignore. Noah, a righteous man in a wicked world, is also commanded by God to build an ark and save his family and pairs of every animal. Like the Mesopotamian myth, the floodwaters cover the entire earth before the ark comes to rest on a mountaintop. Noah also sends out birds, a raven and a dove to check for land. The similarities are so striking that most scholars believe the Hebrew story was heavily influenced by these older Mesopotamian accounts. It's passed down through centuries of cultural exchange. But while folks in the Fertile Crescent imagined an end by water, the Norse of the frozen north saw an apocalypse written in ice and fire. Their end of the world, Ragnarok, wasn't a punishment from the gods. It was their inescapable fate. Ragnarok ends in a universe-scorching inferno. The fire giant Surtur emerges from the fiery realm of Muspelheim with a sword brighter than the sun. He leads his armies against the gods, and in the final battle, he sets the entire world ablaze. The flames leap to the heavens, the stars vanish, and the scorched earth sinks into the boiling sea. For the Norse, whose world was shaped by brutal winters and the volcanic eruptions of nearby Iceland, a fiery end made just as much sense as a watery one did to the people living between two rivers. These stories are so much more than ancient fiction. They're a window into the soul of our ancestors. If you're finding this trip into our shared mythological past as fascinating as I am, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We explore the greatest stories from history and mythology every week, and you won't want to miss what's next. Their arcs onto a cleansed earth. They make sacrifices, and a new pact is made with the divine. In the Mesopotamian story, the gods decide to manage humanity's population differently, introducing things like mortality and infertility to keep them from getting too noisy again. In the Bible, God puts a rainbow in the sky as a promise to never again destroy the world by water. And in the Christian apocalypse, the final victory leads to a new heaven and a new earth, a perfected world free from suffering. In every case, destruction paves the way for creation. So, back to the big question. How did these different cultures arrive at such eerily similar stories about the end of the world? The answer isn't some global conspiracy or a lost prophecy. It's something far more human. First, these myths are born from a very real and rational fear of natural disasters. For the people of Mesopotamia, the devastating floods of the Tigris and Euphrates were a constant threat. So of course they imagined the ultimate catastrophe as a great flood. For the Norse, living in a world of harsh winters and volcanic fire, an end of fire and ice was an equally logical conclusion. These stories were how ancient people tried to make sense of the terrifying forces of nature that were completely beyond their control. Second, these stories serve a deep psychological need for justice. When a society feels corrupt, when injustice seems to be winning, and the world feels broken, the idea of a great reset is incredibly powerful. Apocalyptic stories promise that in the end, the wicked will be punished and the righteous will be saved. They turn the chaos of real life into a story with a beginning, a middle, and a meaningful end. That taps into a fundamental human desire for a just and orderly universe. Finally, and maybe most importantly, our obsession with the end of the world isn't really about endings at all. It's about beginnings. The constant theme of rebirth in these myths reveals a deep-seated human optimism. We tell stories about destruction because we need to believe in our own resilience. Imagine wiping the slate clean so we can imagine building a better world in its place. Perhaps the reason we keep telling stories about the end is because deep down, we don't really believe in endings, only in new beginnings, born from the ashes of the old. These ancient myths aren't just prophecies of doom. They are timeless testaments to our fears, but also to our enduring, unshakable hope for a second chance. What do you think? Do modern doomsday fears about climate change or AI serve the same psychological purpose? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to explore more of humanity's greatest stories, be sure to check out our video on the Epic of Gilgamesh. Thanks for watching.